What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video here today with me. I know it's been a while since my last video, so I believe it was sometime in the beginning of January where I posted a video, maybe mid-January. The issue was that school started up, right? So I'm a grad student, and school started up again, and so winter break is over and it's back into the grind, right? So I don't have as much time as I would like to commit to Magic the Gathering and both playing it and recording with it. So, you know, I do apologize for that lack of video, but at the same time, you know, that's life and you gotta do what you gotta do. So obviously I'm gonna keep doing my best to plan a schedule so that I can actually, you know, set a time aside to record at least one video a week. But right now we're just getting into the groove of things still, so bear with me and we'll work through it together, right? Alright, moving on to the deck of the day. So, today what we're going to be playing is Jeskai Aggro, right? So it's not exactly Jeskai Control or even Jeskai Geist or Queller as a lot of, you know, the more popularized versions, right? But it's actually a Jeskai Aggro list that resembles more or less the lists that were played in the past with things like Mutagenic Growth and Gitaxian Probe. But the thing is, Modern has changed a lot, right? Both in terms of bannings and metagames. So, the deck itself also has to go through a few changes. So I actually released a set of videos with this deck a while back, called it Patriot Aggro. And maybe because I didn't call it Jeskai, people didn't quite click it as much. That's not really the point of this, though. What I'm trying to say is I've worked on the deck since then, and I'm actually really excited to show you the changes. So the biggest inclusion that you'll see here is probably Hazoret, right? That's the biggest card that pops, you know, right in front of you here. It's indestructible, haste, can't attack or block unless you have one or fewer cards in your hand, which is not hard to do in a deck that's very aggressive like this. And then it also has the ability to discard a card and deal 2 damage to each opponent, which is great if you're flooding or you know, you just want to get those last bit of reach into your opponent, right? So, the reason I added Hazoret to the deck was because I felt like it lacked like a big punch at the end, and I also saw how powerful Hazoret was in Standard, and you know, obviously Standard is a completely different meta, different environment, but at the same time there are signs in Standard to how a card can be applicable to Modern. And in this specific case, Hazoret is just, you know, she is incredibly powerful in Standard. Like, honestly, when she drops down, unless your opponent has the answer right there and then, they can be so far behind. And that's exactly what Hazoret does here as well, right? We have a lower curve, as you can see, lots of 1s, a bit less 2s, couple 3s, and then 1 4, right? And when she drops down, she ends the game. So that's what I really like about Hazoret. That's going to be the major new inclusion. I also added a 21st land, you'll notice, to ensure that, hey, we do want to be casting a 4-drop, and we do want to hit our 3rd land drop on time, usually with this deck. Obviously, it's not necessary that we slam Hazoret on 4 with the nature of this deck. At the same time, we want to maximize our capabilities to actually play cards in our deck. So, unlike Grixis Delver, which usually caps out at, say, like 3 mana, you know, even their Delve creatures can cost far less than that. That's why they play 19 to 20 lands. We have to go a little bit higher, right? We're playing 21 lands, only 4 cantrips, and we're playing a 4-drop, okay? So, that's going to be the big reasons of what you see here today. I kept most of the list the same. A few changes. I added 2 Geist of Saint Trapped. Again, it's really nice, powerful threat. I wanted more threats in the deck, right? It felt like a lot of times your opponent answers 1 threat, answers 2 threats, and you're done. There's not much more you can do. Well, this list shores that up, and things like that. The reason I started playing Jeskai Aggro again, instead of, say, maybe Jeskai Control or Blue-White Control. So I played a ton of Blue-White Control the past few weeks. Like, literally putting in a ton of time, both with the Control variants and the Miracles variants, and I just thought to myself, like, sometimes my opponents get draws that I just simply can't interact with, either by the choice of deck that they chose versus my deck, meaning that it was like a non-matchup, or it's just I drew the wrong cards at the wrong time, even though my deck is designed to beat them, right? Oh, well, I play 3 Verdicts, I didn't see them, right? I play 2 Gideon of the Trials, I didn't see them, you know, so you know, it's all these things like, you know, play 3 Cryptic Commands, never saw 1. And obviously that's variance. That's going to happen. But at the same time, Modern is such a fast, you know, completely unforgiving metagame that if your deck doesn't do something consistently, it's really tough, right? So that's not to discount Blue-White Control. It had an amazing showing at the Pro Tour, right? You know, there was tons and tons of people playing it, and it did really, really well in that meta. But in a wide open meta that sometimes we see on Magic Online or paper events, unlike the Pro Tour, which is a heavily metagamed event, you know, it's very hard for a control deck to answer everything out there. So what I'm doing as a player is exploring my options to reduce variance and just kind of increase my win percentage, you know, across the board. And that's what this deck is designed to do. It first of all plays colors that I know very well, that I can navigate well, and that I know how they line up against the rest of the field. But it's also not necessarily a meta deck, right? You don't normally see this deck running around, but it can steal wins, right? It can really, really steal a lot of wins. So that's what we are doing here today, right? We're stealing wins. And you'll notice that there's no Path to Exile in the main deck, right? Because we want to be aggressive game one. If game two, we see that we need Paths in the matchup, all right, Path come in. But game one, it's really like every card needs to be gasoline, right? We just need to keep on applying pressure and end the game. And so, again, I explained to you why I moved from more blue-white control to this build here. I actually played a blue-white mid-range build over the past few days, and actually had a good amount of decent results with it. I had a 4-1, a 3-2, then a couple like 2-3s in there, right? And so that's the thing, like I felt the deck was super powerful. Blue-white control does its thing. This is specifically blue-white mid-range rather than blue-white control. You know, I even had a really funny moment where I ran into Gerard Fabiano online, and obviously we don't know each other, but I was kind of crushing him. He was on 4-color Shadow, and he asked me for my list, you know, and so maybe in the future we'll see Gerard Fabiano play this blue-white mid-range style build, but you know, maybe he was just, you know, for science, right? Just wanted to see what this deck is and how it beat him. Anyways, just wanted to share that with you, but this is where I was a few days ago. Obviously, Dragon Lord Ojutai kind of had a big showing in the Pro Tour, but now, you know, I'm kind of like, okay, I think aggro is where I want to be in the metagame. And so, that's where I am. So again, I explained most of the main deck, right? You just have a lot of cheap spells. Serum Visions, Lightning Bolt, Mutagenic Growth. You have a lot of cheap creatures, Monastery Swiftbeard, Stormchaser Mage, Mantis Rider, all with haste. And then, of course, you have some top end. You have Lightning Helix, really cheap burn. Snapcaster Mage is great, especially with Vapor Snag, Mutagenic Growth, and all of your burn spells. It can get a little awkward with Hazoret sometimes, but ultimately I haven't had any, like, game-losing interactions there yet. So I think both cards are powerful enough to be run alongside each other. And then in terms of the sideboard, we got a really hateful one here, right? 3 Path, 3 Rest in Peace, 3 Stony Silence, because again, Affinity is kind of going to be a tough matchup sometimes. 2 Molten Rain for the mana decks, 2 Wear Tear for things like Blood Moon decks, as well as Affinity, Tron, and Lantern as well. And then we have a couple Dispels here also for the control matchup. As well as combo. So we're kind of trying to get a well-rounded but also very hateful sideboard, and that's what we're doing here today. Anyways, whew, I think I covered everything. That's the deck. Thank you so much for watching. If you watch this, hopefully we'll see some great Hazoret action coming up soon. Again, this is probably going to be the second league that I take this deck through here. So stay tuned for that, and hopefully we'll have some good fun magic. And if we don't, well, we'll go back and reevaluate. So thanks so much for watching, guys, and stay tuned for the first match coming up in just a few moments. Alright, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the first match here with Jeskai Aggro. Alright, we won the die roll. That's a great place to start off. Yeah, let's go ahead and play first. Take a look at our opener here. Yeah, this is actually a very respectable opener, right? I'm going to go ahead and keep. We have 2 threats. We have cheap interaction, 3 lands. Ideally, I think I would want to start with 2 lands in a deck like this. Okay, so if we play Spirebluff Canal, I think there's higher upside to playing the Flooded Strand here. We can still fetch out a Sacred Foundry if we need to Lightning Bolt on turn 1. And then we can also fetch, you know, and not shock if we don't need to. So we'll see what our opponent is on here in just a few moments. With this curve here, and depending on the matchup, we might fire off Bolt at the end of our opponent's turn. But really, it's going to depend entirely on what my opponent does. Forest, Elves. Alright, yeah, so I think I'm going to go ahead and just Lightning Bolt here. Yeah, they have some juicy targets, but we'll probably save the second bolt for like a scarier creature. And here we just go ahead and bash in for 1. We could have a solid next turn where we go Mantis Rider. Alright, I imagine it's going to be Elves being named here. Elf, yeah. Singular. 2-mana Elf, Elvish Visionary, sure. Definitely not scary at all, right? I'm going to be really happy to just go ahead and jam Mantis Rider here. Get in for 4 in the air. And our opponent doesn't have any mana acceleration. We still have a removal spell plus a cantrip left in hand. So we have some time here to apply pressure to our opponent, right? And Dwynen's Elite, not even a scary card in the face of Mantis Rider. Okay, so I think here we just want to lead off Serum Visions, see what we find. Wow, a lot of land. So I don't want to shuffle my deck and put all that back in there. So let's see, if we Lightning Helix here, they go to 12. Then they take, it means a Bolt is lethal next turn. But Bolt is lethal next turn anyways, right? So in case we need to save this for something like an Elvish Archdruid or something like that, I think I'm just going to hold it in hand, right? Because next turn they'll go to, okay, so they hit their land. See, that's an Elvish Archdruid, and exactly what we don't want to see here. But we'll see how aggressive our opponent gets with a potential attack here. Because if they want to attack, we'll absolutely kill the Archdruid and then make some nice blocks here. White, red. And our opponent just concedes. Yeah, that's how we steal. And then we would have drawn the Bolt too. Interesting. Okay, so it's just something to consider. We could have just taken the hit, but alright, in this matchup, I like Path to Exile a lot. Dispel can also be useful for things like Collected Companies and Chords of Calling. Aside from that, I don't think we want anything else. That's what's great also about an aggro deck. I didn't mention the deck, but again, sideboard can be very specific, very, very hateful. In this matchup, I'm not sure Geist is where we want to be necessarily. We also probably want to cut some number of Vapor Snag, as well as Mutagenic Growths. Because again, they'll have blockers and things like that, so Mutagenic Growth is not going to be ideal. And then we just keep our removal here, because Vapor Snag is ultimately a more like a tempo play or a value play, and neither of those are what we're going to be doing in this matchup. So I think we just go ahead and submit here. I think we should be relatively well positioned against Elves if we get another aggressive draw like that. Our opponent obviously stumbled a little, and hey, looks like they're on that 61 card special. We have a great keeper here, right? We have Path, Helix, and a Serum Visions in hand. We have a threat in the form of Mantis Rider, which works great on defense. Looks like our opponent has a turn 1 Dork here, which we unfortunately will... Oh, Nettle Sentinel. Okay. Yeah, I think we'll just go ahead and lead off of Serum Visions here. Nettle Sentinel, not too scary. It's a lot of Snapcaster Mages. I think I'll take one of them. I'm not going to take the second. And again, this is why I don't like Mutagenic Growth all that much in this matchup, because we're really not going to be aggroing our opponent out. We are going to take more of the control-y role. Interesting, our opponent has no natural green sources yet. Sure. Alright, Dwynen's Elite here is pretty good. Right. We knew that was on top. Here we can fetch a basic Plains and Helix something if we need to. Alright, looks like our opponent does have a natural green source. Oof. What is my opponent doing here? Elvish Archdruid? That's definitely going to get Helixed. Opponent goes ahead and attacks. Go ahead and get that basic Plains out here. And only take 5, right? Which is nice for us. Interesting. So we could fetch a basic island here to take a little bit less damage. And I think I kind of like that, right? This way we can get Mantis Rider out on the board, both as a blocker and an attacker. And now we're actually applying pressure on our opponent. And what's nice about mutagenic growth here is that it actually, if my opponent goes like an Archdruid again, we could like mutagenic growth and block something. And our elves, sure. Oh, okay. I think we're in an okay spot here. Scavenging Ooze, huh? Yeah, that's definitely gonna eat a removal spell for me here. I wonder how aggressive my opponent's gonna get. Yeah, not aggressive at all, which makes a lot of sense. Another, that doesn't actually fetch me any basics anymore, so I think what I want to do here is first get in for some damage, and I don't want to ramp my opponent to 4 mana, so I'm going to save this Path to Exile, and I'm going to go ahead and go snap Helix on the Scavenging Ooze on my main phase. Because again, that Scooze is going to be a really problematic card for us moving forward. Both gaining life from my opponent and shutting down our Snapcaster Mages. I guess ramping them actually wasn't that big of a deal considering they already had the Elf here. But Path to Exile can be quite useful against regeneration effects and things like that. Okay, so Heritage Druid is really scary for my opponent. So they could have a series of really, really powerful draws here. Things like Court of Calling, Collected Company could very easily get out of control in terms of what we can control of the board. Yep, looks like our opponent is tapping 4 mana for a Collected Company. Yep, definitely something that I was scared of. But hopefully our opponent bricks on... Whew, okay. Yeah, that's quite good, but there's no Azuri, right? So it would be interesting to see how my opponent attacks here. That's sure. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my mutagenic growth here. I'm gonna get rid of the Nettle Sentinel actually. I think that makes sense. So instead of obviously taking 3 damage, we take, instead of taking 6 damage, we take 5 damage, and we also get rid of one of their creatures. Another Nettle Sentinel. Okay, so this board is definitely manageable. Wow, another Helix. So I think I'm actually going to just Path to Exile this right away. I don't want them to get a, buttload of mana, basically, is my reasoning. And here I'm just going to go ahead and swing in with Mantis Rider. Our opponent does not have any good attacks here. We've got Snap, Path, or Helix available right now. So we're in a good position, assuming our opponent doesn't top deck some nasty stuff, right? Looks like our opponent concedes because they don't see themselves coming back from this. I don't think the game was necessarily over. I think they had maybe 1 or even 2 more draw steps left, but they were definitely far behind, right? Because they can't really profitably attack, and then we're still clocking them in the air. Anyways, that's also what I like about Mantis Rider over Geist of Saint Traff, for example. It just gets through a board like this and also blocks. Anyways, thanks so much for watching, guys, and stay tuned for the second match with Jeskai Aggro. I'll see you all very, very soon.